startup success were true. Some founders sacrifice sleep, others sacrifice relationships. My business partner, Marcus, had sacrificed his soul and unknowingly offered mine as collateral. 3 months earlier, I'd signed what I thought was an investment contract. The fine print, hidden beneath a Scotch stain, told another story. In perpetuity, body and soul, indivisible and irrevocable. Now our company was worth millions. Our competitors were dying in freak accidents. And something ancient was feeding on everyone around us. They say the devil is in the details. I still remember the rain-soaked evening when Marcus and I signed the lease for our first office. Water dripped from the ceiling into a rusted bucket in the corner, keeping time like a broken metronome. The space was barely 500 square feet, but it was ours. We're going to change the world from this room, Alex, Marcus said, his eyes bright with that familiar intensity that both inspired and unnerved me. I raised my cup of cheap champagne. To Prometheus Digital, we'd met in graduate school, both pursuing MBAs after realizing our philosophy degrees wouldn't pay the bills. Marcus was brilliant, charismatic, driven in a way that seemed almost preternatural. I was methodical, pragmatic, detail-oriented. He dreamed. I executed. A perfect partnership. That night, as rain pounded against the windows, I believed it too. We huddled over my laptop, finalizing our pitch for potential investors. Our software promised to revolutionize how small businesses manage their supply chains. If only someone would give us the capital to build it. They're going to laugh us out of the room. I sighed. Marcus's hand landed on my shoulder. No, they won't. Trust me. The strange thing was, I did trust him despite knowing him for only 2 years. There was something in his confidence that made you believe the impossible was merely improbable. As I gathered my things to leave, I noticed a small leather-bound book on Marcus's desk that I hadn't seen before. New reading material? I asked, gesturing to the book. Something flickered across Marcus's face before he casually placed a folder over it. Just some old family heirloom. My grandfather left it to me as I stepped out into the rain. I turned back to see Marcus, silhouetted in the window, staring at something on his desk. Unnaturally still, that image, Marcus frozen in concentration. The rain streaking the window like tears would return to me often in the months ahead. A harbinger I failed to recognize. Our investors' meeting was a disaster. 5 minutes in, I could already read the room, stifled yawns, surreptitious glances at watches, polite but vacant smiles. We appreciate your enthusiasm. Gentlemen, said Eleanor Winters, the head of the venture capital firm, closing her portfolio. But we're looking for startups with more traction. Come back when you've got some actual clients. The classic catch-22, I muttered as we rode the elevator down. We need money to get clients, but we need clients to get money. Marcus was unnaturally quiet beside me. I'd expected him to be disappointed, but he seemed almost contemplative. We'll figure something out, I offered. He looked at me then with an expression I couldn't decipher. Yes, we will. In fact, I already have. That night, Marcus didn't come to the office. He texted saying he needed time to recalibrate our approach. I spent the evening alone, combing through our business plan. By midnight, my faith was wavering. The sharp knock on the office door startled me. Marcus stood in the hallway, rain-drenched despite the clear night sky, his eyes feverishly bright. I found our solution, he said. What solution? He didn't answer immediately, busy emptying his messenger bag onto his desk. Out came his laptop, a bottle of expensive scotch I knew he couldn't afford. And the same leather-bound book. We've been thinking too small. Alex, trying to play by their rules. He pushed a mug of scotch toward me. We don't need them. Marcus, we need capital. Unless you've got a few million stashed away. Better, he interrupted. I've found us a private investor. Someone who sees our true potential. My heart quickened with hope. Who? This investor prefers discretion. They're willing to fund us fully. No equity dilution, no board seats, complete creative control. It sounded too good to be true. What's the catch? Marcus's laugh was hollow. The catch is performance. We deliver results, we keep the money, we fail. Well, we won't fail. He pushed the leather book toward me. All the details are in here. The terms of the agreement. The book was heavier than it looked, unnaturally warm to the touch. I opened it carefully. The pages were filled with dense, elegant script in what looked like Latin or some ancient language. "I can't read this," I said. "You don't need to," Marcus replied, pulling a single sheet of modern paper from between the pages. "This is the English summary." I scanned the document. It outlined exactly what Marcus had described. Full funding, no equity surrendered, complete autonomy. The only conditions were aggressive growth targets for the next 5 years. At the bottom were 2 signature lines. One bore Marcus's distinctive scrawl. The other was blank, waiting for mine. "You already signed this? Without consulting me?" I asked, incredulous. Marcus reached across the desk and gripped my wrist. "This is our one shot, Alex. I need you with me on this." I looked down at the contract again. A drop of scotch had fallen on the page, spreading like a bloodstain across the paper. "I don't know. Something about this doesn't feel right." Marcus's grip tightened. "Trust me. Haven't I always steered us right?" "Okay," I said finally, reaching for a pen. "I trust you." As I signed my name, the ink glistened like fresh blood under the fluorescent lights. The changes were subtle at first. 3 days after I signed the contract, we received an email from Blue Sky Technologies, a company we'd pitched months ago without success. They wanted to implement our solution immediately, despite the fact that we hadn't even built it yet. "I don't understand," I said, staring at my screen in disbelief. "They rejected us outright last time," Marcus merely smiled. "Their loss would have been someone else's gain. Within weeks, we had 5 clients, then 10, then 20. Our hastily assembled prototype performed flawlessly. Money poured in. We moved from our leaky office to a gleaming space downtown. We hired staff. By the 3rd month, Prometheus Digital was being hailed as the fastest-growing tech startup in the city." "This is impossible," I whispered to Marcus as we stood on the balcony of our new office. "No company grows this fast." He handed me a glass of expensive scotch. "Not impossible, just improbable. Strange things began happening. Competitors who had been aggressive in our market suddenly shuttered their businesses. Potential clients who had been hesitant would call us, almost desperate to sign contracts. Their eyes glazed with an unnatural eagerness. Most disturbing were the dreams, vivid nightmares that left me gasping awake. Dreams of shadowy boardrooms where faceless figures signed papers in blood. Dreams of Marcus standing before an altar of computer servers, chanting in a language I didn't understand. The leather book remained a constant presence. Marcus carried it everywhere, consulting it in private moments. Once I glimpsed him in his office, the book open before him, his lips moving in silent conversation with the empty air. What exactly is in that book? I asked him over lunch one day. His hand moved instinctively to his messenger bag. Family histories. Old business wisdom. Nothing that would interest you. We're partners, remember? No secrets. Something dark passed behind his eyes. Some knowledge isn't meant to be shared, Alex, even between partners. That evening I stayed late waiting until Marcus left. The leather book was locked in his desk drawer, but I knew where the key was hidden. The book felt almost alive in my hands. I turned to the back, where several pages had been recently disturbed. There, inserted between the ancient pages, was the original contract I had signed. In small print beneath our signatures were the words, "In perpetuity, body and soul indivisible and irrevocable." A cold dread settled in my stomach. What had Marcus gotten us into? What had I blindly agreed to? The lights flickered suddenly. When they came back on, I hastily replaced the book and locked the drawer. As I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in Marcus's office window. For a split second, my eyes appeared completely black, like empty sockets in my pale face. 6 months into our inexplicable success, Marcus insisted we needed to celebrate. He reserved the entire rooftop of the city's most exclusive hotel, inviting clients, employees, and industry influencers to the best decision we ever made, Marcus whispered as we clinked glasses. I forced a smile. To decisions we can live with. As the party reached its peak, a server approached with a silver tray bearing a single envelope. "For Mr. Blake and Mr. Sullivan," she said, her voice oddly monotone. Marcus opened it carefully, removing a simple ivory card. His face paled as he read the message. "What is it?" I asked. He handed me the card. In elegant black script were the words, "Quarterly review tomorrow, 3 a.m. boardroom. Attendance non-negotiable." "Who sent this?" I demanded. Marcus's hand closed around my wrist. "Our investor. The one who made all of this possible. At 3 a.m. Tell them we'll meet during business hours like normal people." Marcus laughed hollowly. "They're not normal people, Alex, and this isn't a request you can decline." "What have you done, Marcus? Who exactly is this investor?" He released my wrist, turning to gaze out over the city. "Does it matter? Look at what we've built. It matters if we're breaking the law. It matters if there are strings attached you haven't told me about." For a moment, Marcus's facade cracked. "It's too late for those concerns. We're committed now, both of us." That night I couldn't sleep. The ivory card sat on my nightstand, menacing in the darkness. Quarterly review. As if we were employees rather than founders. At 2:30 a.m. I drove to the office. Our building stood tall and dark against the sky. Marcus was already there when I arrived, pacing outside our boardroom. The leather book was clutched in his hands. "You didn't have to come," he said, though his relieved expression belied his words. "We're partners. Whatever mess you've gotten us into, we face it together." At precisely 3 a.m., the elevator dinged. The doors opened to reveal nothing, yet Marcus straightened his tie. "They're here." I followed his gaze, seeing nothing but our familiar conference room. "There's no one there, Marcus." He gave me a pitying look. "Not everyone makes themselves visible, Alex." As we entered the boardroom, the temperature dropped precipitously. The lights flickered, dimming to a muted glow that cast long shadows across the walls. Marcus took his seat, placing the leather book in front of him. He gestured for me to sit beside him. "Welcome to your first quarterly review," he said softly. "Try not to show fear. They can smell it." Before I could ask who they were, the leather book opened by itself, pages riffling as if caught in a wind, though the air was deathly still, and then I heard it. A voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, neither male nor female. A voice that bypassed my ears and spoke directly into my mind. "Prometheus Digital. First quarter performance evaluation." Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir. We've exceeded all projected metrics. Growth at 327% quarter over quarter. Market penetration at 42%. Competitor displacement at 88%. Acceptable," the voice replied. "The contract fulfillment proceeds as agreed." I found my voice at last. "What contract? What exactly are the terms we're fulfilling?" The room grew colder. In the shadows at the far end of the table, I glimpsed movement, a darker darkness taking shape, coalescing into something almost human, yet fundamentally wrong. "The signatory questions the arrangement," the voice observed with amusement. Marcus shot me a warning glance. "Alex is fully committed. He simply hasn't been privy to all the details." "Ignorance is not an exemption, Mr. Sullivan. Your signature binds you, regardless of your understanding." The shadowy figure seemed more substantial now. No features were visible, just an absence of light in the rough shape of a person. "What exactly did I sign?" I asked. "A standard exchange," came the reply. "Success beyond your limited human capacity to achieve, in return for services to be rendered upon completion of the contract term." "Services?" Marcus interrupted. "Future considerations, Alex. Nothing to worry about for years." 5 years, the voice corrected. As stipulated, the leather book slammed shut with such force that we both flinched. The shadow dissolved, spreading along the walls before disappearing entirely. The lights returned to normal. The room warmed. "What the hell was that?" I demanded once we were alone. Marcus carefully returned the book to his bag. "That was Mr. Abaddon, our silent partner." "That wasn't a person, Marcus. I never said it was." He met my eyes at last, all pretense gone. "I did what I had to do, Alex, for us. Would you rather be back in that leaking office, begging for scraps from investors?" I had no answer. The truth was, part of me was still intoxicated by our success, by the money, the recognition, the vindication of our vision. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only begun to understand the true cost of our bargain, that the fine print on our contract contained clauses far more sinister than quarterly reviews. The changes in Marcus became impossible to ignore after the quarterly review. He grew thinner, his once vibrant face taking on a gaunt, haunted quality. Dark circles permanently ringed his eyes. Yet our business continued to thrive under his increasingly erratic leadership. "Are you sleeping at all?" I asked one morning, finding him already at his desk at 5 a.m. in the same clothes as yesterday. He looked up with a start. "Sleep is inefficient. We have targets to meet." The leather book lay open beside him, its pages covered in what looked like calculations in the same ancient script. "Marcus, we need to talk about what happened at that meeting." "About Mr. Abaddon." His hands jerked involuntarily at the name, knocking over his coffee. The liquid spread across his desk, threatening the book. Marcus lunged for it with a cry of alarm. "Never say that name casually," he hissed, eyes wild. "Names have power. I want to know exactly what we've agreed to. What happens after 5 years?" Marcus's laugh was brittle. "After? Who says there is an after? At what cost?" He carefully wiped the book with his sleeve. "Everything valuable has a cost." "Not everything costs your soul," I countered. His head snapped up. "Don't be melodramatic. It's a business arrangement, nothing more." That afternoon, I visited my mother in her nursing home. At 82, dementia had robbed her of recent memories, but she still recognized me. "Alexander," she smiled. "My good boy." As I was preparing to leave, her grip on my hand suddenly tightened. Her eyes, usually clouded with confusion, became sharp and focused. "You're marked," she whispered, tracing invisible patterns on my palm. A chill ran through me. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I see it. The shadow on you." Her voice had changed. "You signed something you shouldn't have." "How could you possibly know that?" Her eyes filled with tears. "My father made a bargain, too. For the farm. During the drought of 36, nothing grew that year except on our land." She leaned closer. "They always collect, Alexander, always." When I returned to the office, I found Eliza, our head of marketing, waiting outside my door. "We need to talk," she said, glancing nervously down the hall toward Marcus's office. "Privately." I ushered her inside, closing the door. "What's wrong?" "It's about the Singapore deal," she said quietly. "Something happened to Axiom Tech." Axiom had been our main competitor for a major contract, a deal worth 8 figures that would establish Prometheus as a global player. We had won the contract outright yesterday. "What about them?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Their entire executive team was on a private jet to Singapore. It crashed into the Indian Ocean last night. No survivors. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "That's terrible." Eliza's eyes met mine, filled with fear. "That's the 5th competitor this year to experience a catastrophic setback right before we closed a deal they were also pursuing." "Coincidences happen," I said weakly. "Do they?" "5 times. And there's more. Remember Blue Sky Technologies? Our first big client?" I nodded. "Their CEO signed our contract on a Tuesday. The previous Monday, his 7-year-old daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. The day after he signed, the doctors called. Complete remission. A medical miracle." My mouth went dry. "What are you suggesting?" "I don't know what I'm suggesting because none of this makes sense. But I've worked in tech for 15 years, and I've never seen a company rise as fast as we have, with as many convenient coincidences clearing our path." "Have you spoken to Marcus about this?" Her face paled. "I tried yesterday. He changed when I brought it up. His eyes..." She shook her head. "He told me I was overworked and suggested I take a vacation. Effective immediately." "That sounds reasonable," I offered. "Alex, he already booked the trip. A luxury resort in Bali, everything paid for. The car is waiting downstairs to take me to the airport right now." "Take the vacation," I told Eliza, making a sudden decision. "But when you get back, start looking for another job." Her eyes widened. "You believe me?" After she left, I sat alone in my darkening office, piecing together what I knew. The impossible success, the shadowy investor, the competitors who met with disaster, the clients whose personal tragedies reversed the moment they signed with us, and Marcus changing before my eyes into someone or something I no longer recognized. I removed a small mirror from my desk drawer. My reflection looked normal at first, but as I stared longer, I noticed what my mother had seen, a faint darkness hovering at the edges of my features. Like a shadow that didn't quite match my movements, I recalled the words from the contract: in perpetuity, body and soul, indivisible and irrevocable. My signature had bound me just as surely as Marcus's. Whatever transformation had begun in him was happening to me too. More slowly perhaps, but just as inevitably, I needed to see the leather book again. The opportunity came when Marcus left for a 3-day business trip to London. That night, I returned to the office after everyone had gone home. To my surprise, the leather book sat openly on his desk. I approached cautiously, half expecting an alarm to sound or shadows to coalesce into watchful guardians. I pulled on latex gloves and carefully opened the cover. The first pages contained the now familiar script, an ancient language that seemed to shift when I tried to focus on individual characters. Near the middle, I found a section of newer pages. Here the text was interspersed with recognizable names, client companies, competitors, dates, dollar amounts. It resembled a ledger. I turned another page and froze. There was a full-page illustration, rendered in rust-colored ink, of a human figure. Anatomical lines divided the body into sections, each labeled in the unknown language. The figure's face was blank except for eyes that seemed to stare directly at me. Below was a list of names: the CEO of Blue Sky, the executive team of Axiom Tech, other business leaders whose companies had either become our clients or mysteriously failed. Some names were crossed out. With trembling fingers, I turned to the final pages. There I found what I had been seeking, our original contract, no longer obscured by Scotch stains. Herein lies the covenant between the beneficiaries, Marcus Blake and Alexander Sullivan, and the provider, Abaddon. For 5 years from signature, the beneficiaries shall receive business success beyond mortal achievement, removal of all obstacles, fulfillment of reasonable requests related to business advancement. In exchange, the beneficiaries commit their souls in perpetuity, body and soul, indivisible and irrevocable, service to the provider upon completion of the contract term, sacrifice of specified offerings as required for covenant maintenance. This covenant cannot be broken, transferred or negated by any means. Death does not nullify obligations. Each beneficiary is bound individually and collectively. The actions of one bind all. The penalty for attempted breach is immediate collection of all outstanding obligations. Beneath this, our signatures stood stark against the paper. But there was a third signature, one I hadn't noticed before. A symbol burned into the paper itself. As I stared, the symbol began to move, the lines rearranging themselves like a living thing. The burned edges glowed faintly. I slammed the book shut. My phone rang, shattering the silence. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. "What are you doing in my office?" he asked without preamble. I glanced around, seeing no cameras. "How did you—" "The book knows when it's being handled. By anyone other than me. We need to talk about this contract, Marcus. About what we've really signed up for." His laugh was hollow. "Too late for that. 5 years, remember. We're barely into year 1, and after 5 years, we become what?" When Marcus spoke again, his voice had changed, deepened. "Not slaves, Alex, apostles, executors of a grand design. Do you cling to your humanity when you could be so much more? I never agreed to become anything other than what I am. But you did," he countered. "Your signature, your willing participation, your enjoyment of the fruits our bargain has yielded. Is there a way out?" I asked. "Why would you want one? Look at what we've built." Look at what we're becoming. That's what terrifies me. Marcus sighed, briefly sounding like his old self. Put the book back exactly as you found it. We'll discuss this when I return. But Alex, be careful what you say aloud in the office. The walls have ears now. Literally, after hanging up, I carefully returned the book. As I did, a small slip of paper fell from between the pages. It contained just 5 words in Marcus's handwriting. 3rd floor, electrical room, panel C. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The electrical room was unlocked. Panel C was on the far wall. I opened it cautiously. Behind the panel was a small recess hollowed into the wall. Inside was a cloth-wrapped bundle. I removed it carefully, unwrapping layers of black silk to reveal an ornate silver dagger, its blade inscribed with symbols similar to those in the book. Tucked alongside was a folded note in Marcus's handwriting. If the worst happens, blood freely given can break what blood freely given has bound. One final offering made with pure intent. I'm sorry I brought you into this, Alex. I truly am. I rewrapped the dagger and returned it to its hiding place, my mind reeling. Marcus had left me an escape route, or at least he believed he had, and whether blood freely given meant what I feared it did. 3 weeks passed. Marcus returned from London with 5 new European contracts. He said nothing about my investigation of the book, though sometimes I caught him watching me with a calculating expression. I kept the knowledge of the dagger to myself. Meanwhile, Prometheus continued its relentless expansion. We moved again to an entire building rebranded with our logo, a stylized flame reaching upward, consuming everything in its path. Our staff numbered in the hundreds now. New employees were carefully screened by Marcus personally. I noticed a pattern in his selections, people who were desperate in some way. An engineer with crushing medical debt, a marketing specialist whose child needed therapy their insurance wouldn't cover, a receptionist whose mother faced eviction, people who might ignore oddities in exchange for generous salaries and benefits, people who had something to lose. Eliza returned from her enforced vacation, tanned and outwardly relaxed. When she passed me in the hallway, she slipped a folded note into my pocket. Meet me tonight. Giovanni's Cafe, 8 p.m. Come alone. Tell no one. I arrived early, choosing a table at the back with a view of both entrances. Eliza appeared at 8, wearing sunglasses and a scarf that partially obscured her face. Are you being followed? Were her first words. I don't think so, I replied, though the shadows themselves seem to track my movements these days. She removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes rimmed red from either lack of sleep or excessive crying. I didn't go to Bali. I got off before takeoff. Told them I was having a panic attack. Why? Because I didn't trust the coincidence of Marcus sending me halfway around the world the moment I started asking questions. She leaned forward. I've spent the last 3 weeks investigating Prometheus. And Marcus. And you. A waitress approached. Eliza fell silent until she moved away. What did you find? I asked. Eliza reached into her bag and removed a manila folder. Marcus Blake doesn't exist. Not before 5 years ago. No birth records, no school transcripts, no previous employment history, nothing. She slid several photographs across the table, various scenes from corporate events. In each, Marcus stood among groups of people. But the people standing nearest to him seemed diminished somehow. Paler, thinner, their smiles strained. These people all work closely with Marcus, Eliza explained. Notice anything about them? I studied the images carefully. They look unwell. They look drained, she corrected. This VP of operations? She pointed to a gaunt man beside Marcus in the most recent photo. Dead of a heart attack last month. 38 years old, no prior health conditions. My stomach twisted. I thought of my own reflection, the subtle shadow hovering at my edges. Was I being drained too? There's one more thing, Eliza said, her voice wavering. She pulled out her phone and queued up a video. I installed a small camera in the conference room after hours. The video showed our boardroom empty and dimly lit. The timestamp indicated 2:58 a.m. 3 nights ago. Just watch, Eliza whispered. At exactly 3 a.m. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Frost formed on the camera lens. When it cleared, Marcus sat at the head of the table, the leather book open before him. His lips moved in silent recitation, and then the shadows around the room began to coalesce, gathering at the opposite end of the table. They formed a vaguely humanoid shape, too tall and too thin to be natural. Marcus bowed his head to the shadow figure. Words appeared as text at the bottom. Eliza had added subtitles. Marcus, the offerings have been selected. 23 in total. Shadow, acceptable. Their essence will fuel the next phase. Marcus, and Sullivan, he grows resistant. Shadow, he is bound by the same contract as you. His cooperation is preferred but not required. The shadow expanded, filling more of the room. Frost covered the camera lens again, and when it cleared, both Marcus and the shadow were gone. Eliza stopped the video, her hands trembling. "What have you and Marcus done?" "We made a deal," I said quietly. "For success." But I didn't know the full terms. "A deal with what?" "That thing in the shadows? It calls itself Abaddon." The color drained from her face. "That's a Hebrew name for the angel of destruction." "What does it mean, Alex?" "The offerings. 23 people?" I thought of the new hires, all carefully selected by Marcus. "I think Marcus is sacrificing them somehow. Their energy, their essence, to feed whatever is powering Prometheus's success." Eliza closed the folder with shaking hands. "We have to stop this." "And tell them what?" "That my business partner made a deal with a demon. That our company is powered by supernatural energy harvested from our employees." "Then we need to find another way," she insisted. "I can't be part of this." "Neither can I, but we need to be careful. If Marcus suspects, it might already be too late." Eliza nodded toward the cafe window. Outside, a black SUV with tinted windows had pulled up. "Is there a back exit?" I asked urgently. We left cash on the table and slipped through the kitchen. Eliza's car was waiting in the alley. "Where can we go?" she asked as we pulled away. "They'll check our homes." I thought of the dagger hidden in the electrical panel. "Take me back to the office. There's something there I need to get." "The office. That's the first place they'll look. Trust me. It's our only chance." As we drove through the darkening city, I realized how completely our lives had changed in less than a year. From struggling entrepreneurs to puppets of a supernatural entity. From chasing our dreams to running for our lives. We entered the Prometheus building through the loading dock, using Eliza's security badge to bypass the main entrance. The service elevator hummed quietly as we ascended to the 3rd floor. "What exactly are we looking for?" Eliza whispered. "A weapon," I replied. "Something Marcus left for me, in case things went wrong." The electrical room door stood ajar, a thin line of bluish light spilling into the corridor. Someone had been here before us. I cautiously pushed the door wider. Marcus sat on the floor beside the open panel, the unwrapped dagger gleaming in his hands. He looked up as I entered, his face haggard. "I knew you'd come for it eventually," he said, his voice rougher, deeper than I remembered. Especially after Eliza started poking around. Eliza stepped into view behind me. "You knew I didn't go to Bali." Marcus laughed, the sound like stones grinding. "I know everything that happens in this company, in this city." His eyes are everywhere now. I took a careful step closer. "Marcus, what have you done to our employees?" "What I've done?" He looked genuinely confused. "I've given them everything they wanted. Dina's mother got the best cancer treatment. Jason's son is in a private school for children with special needs. In exchange for what?" I demanded. "Parts of their souls." Marcus turned the dagger over in his hands. "Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, Alex. It can only be transferred." "That's basic physics." "This isn't physics," Eliza interjected. "Is it?" Marcus looked up at her with something like pity. "The ancients understood energy transfer better than we do. They just had different names for it." I moved closer, keeping my eyes on the dagger. "The contract mentions offerings. Those are people, aren't they?" Marcus shrugged. "Small sacrifices. They give a little energy, a little essence. Nothing they'll miss in the short term. And in return, they get what they most desire. And in the long term, I pressed. His smile was chilling. We all pay eventually, Alex. Even you. Even me. How did you find that book, Marcus? The truth. He was silent for a long moment. My grandfather. The book was his. And his father's before him. Family heirloom, like I told you. And your grandfather made a similar deal? Marcus nodded. For the family shipping business. Depression era. Everything was failing, but Blake Shipping thrived. He laughed bitterly. Until the contract ended. Then everything collapsed. My grandfather changed. Started talking about voices, shadows. They found him hanging in his office in 41, so you knew what it was. What it could do. I knew it offered a way out of failure. A way to prove myself. His eyes met mine. I never meant for you to be involved. Alex, the contract only needed one signature. Mine. But you insisted we were partners in everything. So you let me sign without telling me what I was agreeing to. Would you have believed me if I had? Would you have signed if you knew? I had no answer. I probably wouldn't have. What happens after 5 years? Eliza asked. Marcus's face darkened. The full price comes due. Abaddon doesn't just want energy anymore. He wants vessels. Bodies to use in this world. The implication hit me. Possession. Transformation, Marcus corrected. We become extensions of him. New forms through which he can operate. And that's why you left me the dagger? I asked. As a way out? He nodded, hands tightening around the silver hilt. Blood freely given can break the contract. A willing sacrifice. Suicide. Eliza whispered, horrified. Salvation, Marcus countered. One pure act to undo the corruption. The room felt suddenly colder. Shadows deepened, spreading like ink across the walls. He's coming, Marcus said, rising to his feet. He knows what we're discussing. Marcus thrust the dagger toward me. Take it. You still have a chance. I hesitated, then reached for the weapon. As my fingers closed around the hilt, a violent tremor shook the building. The lights flickered wildly, then went out entirely. A moment later, emergency lights activated, bathing the room in a sickly red glow. In that crimson illumination, I saw Marcus's face transform, his features elongating, shadows pooling in the hollows of his cheeks, his eyes reflecting light like an animal's. Too late, he growled, his voice no longer entirely his own. He's here. The temperature plummeted. Our breath fogged before us. The shadows began to move independently of any light source, flowing together like liquid darkness. Run, Marcus commanded, pushing me toward the door. Both of you run! Eliza grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the exit. But I resisted, my eyes fixed on Marcus as he turned to face the coalescing shadow. You can't stop this, Marcus called to the darkness, his voice stronger now. The contract has a loophole. Blood freely given. The shadow paused, as if considering his words. Then it spoke in that same mind voice from the boardroom. Your blood is already mine, Marcus Blake, as is your soul, as is your body. Not yet, Marcus replied, raising the dagger. Not for 3 more years. Before I could move, Marcus plunged the dagger into his own chest. Blood blossomed across his white shirt. Shockingly bright in the red emergency lighting, the shadow recoiled, rippling like disturbed water. A high, thin sound filled the room, painful to human ears. Foolish mortal. Your sacrifice changes nothing. The contract remains. 2 signatures, 2 souls. Marcus crumpled to his knees, blood pouring between his fingers. His eyes found mine, clear and human again in his dying moments. I'm sorry, Alex, I thought. I could free us both. I lunged toward him, but Eliza pulled me back. We have to go, now! The shadow was expanding rapidly. As Marcus collapsed, the darkness seemed to pour into him, his body jerking unnaturally. Eliza pulled me through the door. We ran down the corridor toward the service elevator, the emergency lights casting everything in a hellish glow. Behind us, the electrical room door burst outward. From the darkness emerged a figure, Marcus's body, moving with jerky motions, the dagger still protruding from his chest. But his eyes were solid black now, his mouth stretched in a grin too wide for a human face. Alexander Sullivan, it called in a voice that was a parody of Marcus's. Your partner's sacrifice was meaningless. Blood must be given for the right reasons. His was given in fear, not love. The contract holds. The elevator doors opened, and Eliza shoved me inside. As they began to close, the thing that had been Marcus moved toward us with impossible speed. A hand, no longer fully human, the fingers too long, caught the doors. Eliza screamed. I acted on instinct, bringing my foot down hard on the distorted hand. Bones snapped, but the creature didn't flinch. You cannot escape what you have signed for, it said, its voice a hideous blend of Marcus's and something inhuman. Join us willingly and the transition will be less painful. The doors continued to close. At the last moment, it withdrew its mangled hand, but not before I glimpsed Marcus's face one final time. Beneath the black eyes and rictus grin, I caught a glimpse of the real Marcus trapped inside, silently screaming. Then the doors sealed shut, carrying us away from the horror above. We drove without direction at first, putting distance between ourselves and the Prometheus building. The city lights blurred past as Eliza pushed her sedan beyond the speed limit. Do you think it's following us? She asked, checking the rearview mirror constantly. I don't know. Maybe not physically, but I touched my chest. I signed that contract. I'm connected to whatever that thing is. We need somewhere to regroup. Think this through. Not my place, I said quickly. That would be the first place they'd look. And not yours either, she nodded grimly. I know somewhere. An old family cabin about 2 hours north. It's isolated, off the grid. As we left the city behind, I felt a strange pressure lifting, as if I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't fully recognized until it eased. The further we drove from Prometheus, from the urban center where our unholy business had flourished, the more clearly I could think. Tell me everything, Eliza said, once we were safely on the highway. From the beginning, and so I did. The failed investor meetings, Marcus's mysterious private investor, the contract I signed without understanding, the impossible success that followed, the quarterly review with the shadow entity, Marcus's deterioration, the true nature of our business, success built on the subtle vampirism of our employees' life force. So Prometheus is essentially a soul-harvesting operation disguised as a tech company. Put so bluntly, it sounded absurd, yet I couldn't deny the truth of it. Yes, and I helped build it. Not knowingly, she argued. Marcus deceived you. I should have asked more questions. Should have been more suspicious when everything came too easily. Like me, Eliza said quietly. Single mom, underwater on my mortgage after my ex cleaned out our accounts. Prometheus offered twice my previous salary. I looked at her with new understanding. What did Marcus promise you beyond the paycheck? She was silent for a long moment. My daughter has cystic fibrosis. The day after I signed my employment contract, her doctor called. Her latest test results showed dramatic improvement. Unprecedented, he called it. My stomach clenched. Another miracle with strings attached. I'm sorry, I said inadequately. Do you think, will she get worse now? Because I've run? Eliza's voice trembled. I had no comforting answer. I don't know. The contract mentions offerings in exchange for Abaddon's services. If you're no longer providing those offerings, she nodded, blinking back tears. I figured as much. But I couldn't stay, not after what I saw. We fell into silence as the highway unspooled before us. Eventually, Eliza turned onto smaller roads. The cabin appeared suddenly, a small rustic structure nestled among towering pines. No other buildings were visible. My grandfather built it, Eliza explained. He was somewhat paranoid. Believed society would collapse eventually. Inside, the cabin was basic but comfortable. A main room with a stone fireplace. A small kitchen with propane-powered appliances. 2 bedrooms. Solar panels on the roof provided minimal electricity. No internet, no cell service, Eliza said. We're effectively invisible here. I sank onto the worn sofa, the events of the night catching up with me. Marcus is dead. Dead, and something else is wearing his body. Eliza busied herself making coffee. You saw what happened. He tried to break the contract and failed. Because he did it out of fear, not love, I repeated the entity's words. Blood must be given for the right reasons. What does that even mean? I shook my head. The note Marcus left said, "Blood freely given can break what blood freely given has bound." I think he meant a willing sacrifice could undo the contract. But he sacrificed himself willingly, Eliza argued. Not for the right reason, apparently. Abaddon said Marcus acted from fear, not love. Eliza settled beside me. So what would constitute the right reason? Sacrificing yourself out of love? Or for whom? I mused. We spent the remainder of the night planning our approach, making lists of resources to consult, people who might have knowledge we could use. As dawn broke, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before signing the contract. Hope. "We should get some rest," Eliza suggested. Seeing my exhaustion, I nodded gratefully and made my way to the small bedroom. As I lay down, I found myself thinking not of Marcus or Abaddon, but of Eliza, her courage in the face of supernatural horror, her willingness to risk everything, including her daughter's miraculous health, to do what was right. With that thought in mind, I drifted into the first peaceful sleep I'd had in months. I woke to the smell of coffee and papers rustling. I found Eliza at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of printed documents. A battery-powered printer sat on the counter. "You've been busy," I observed, pouring coffee from the percolator. She looked up, dark circles under her eyes, suggesting she hadn't slept at all. "I drove into town while you were sleeping. Found a library with internet access. Downloaded everything I could find about Abaddon, soul contracts, supernatural bindings. Then brought it all back here to study." I sat across from her. "Found anything useful?" "Maybe." She pushed a stack of papers toward me. "Abaddon appears in multiple religious traditions. The name translates to destroyer, or place of destruction in Hebrew. In the book of Revelation, he's called the angel of the bottomless pit. So we're dealing with a biblical demon, or something that's been using that identity for millennia." Eliza tapped another pile. "There are similar entities in other cultures, beings that make bargains with humans, granting success or power in exchange for souls." "Like Faust," I suggested. "Exactly. The Faustian bargain is a recurring theme across cultures. What's interesting is that in many versions there's a way out, a loophole, a chance at redemption, hope stirred within me." "Like what?" "It varies. Sometimes it's a riddle, sometimes a contest of wits, sometimes a test of character." She hesitated. "And sometimes it's sacrifice, blood freely given," I recalled. "But Marcus's sacrifice didn't work, because he did it wrong," Eliza insisted. "Abaddon said he acted from fear, not love. What if that's the key? The motivation behind the sacrifice matters." I considered this. "So a sacrifice made out of love might break the contract." "It's a common theme in redemption stories. Love is the ultimate power against darkness. But love for whom? And what kind of sacrifice?" Eliza sifted through more papers. "There's something else. In several accounts, the entity can't actually take the soul by force. The person has to surrender it willingly. I already did that when I signed the contract," I pointed out. "Did you, though? You signed without knowing what you were really agreeing to." "That's not informed consent," she leaned forward. "What if your ignorance is actually protection? What if Abaddon needs you to fully, knowingly surrender before it can claim your soul?" It was tantalizing that perhaps I wasn't as bound as I feared, that my signature, given in ignorance, might not constitute the full surrender Abaddon required. "That would explain why it's been cultivating me," I said slowly, "creating conditions where I might eventually give in willingly." "Exactly. And it would explain why Marcus changed more rapidly than you. Maybe he knew exactly what he was signing up for from the beginning." I thought of Marcus's confession, that he had recognized the book from his family history. "That makes sense. He made an informed choice." "I didn't," Eliza nodded. "So we have two possible avenues. Find the right kind of sacrifice to break the contract entirely, or resist full surrender until we can find another solution." "What about the employees?" I asked. "The offerings Abaddon has been collecting. There are hundreds of people whose lives are entwined with this entity now." Her face fell. "I've been thinking about that too. About my daughter. If Abaddon's influence has been healing her, we need to free everyone," I decided. "Not just me. Everyone who's been caught in this web. That's ambitious, Eliza said carefully. Then we keep researching. I reached for a stack of papers. There has to be a way. These stories persist because they speak to something fundamentally human. The belief that no matter how dark the bargain, redemption is possible. We spent the next 2 days immersed in research. We studied religious texts, folklore, historical accounts of demonic pacts. Slowly, a pattern emerged. In successful breakings of supernatural contracts, 3 elements appeared consistently: recognition, acknowledging the full extent of one's binding; renunciation, rejecting the benefits gained through the contract; and redemption, an act that demonstrated true change or sacrifice. The 3 R's, Eliza dubbed them, circling the words on our makeshift whiteboard. Recognition, renunciation, redemption. That's our formula. Recognition I've got covered, I said. Renunciation would mean walking away from Prometheus, from all the success and wealth, which you've essentially already done by running, Eliza pointed out. But not officially. Legally, I still own half the company. I need to formally renounce it. That leaves redemption, the sacrifice. Eliza studied our notes. Almost universally, the redemptive act involves giving up something deeply valued. Not for personal gain, but for the benefit of others. Giving up Prometheus would cost me millions, I offered. She shook her head. Money isn't personal enough. It needs to be something that truly matters to you. What if, I said slowly, the sacrifice isn't about giving up something I have, but about giving up something I could become? Eliza looked intrigued. Go on. Abaddon wants me as a vessel. What if my redemptive act is to make myself unusable to it? To corrupt my own vessel in some way that makes me worthless to Abaddon? Before Eliza could respond, a sharp crack echoed through the cabin, a branch breaking outside. Another crack, followed by footsteps on the gravel path. Someone's here, Eliza whispered, moving quickly to the window. She peered through a gap in the curtains, then recoiled. It's him. It's Marcus. Or whatever's wearing his body. How did he find us? The contract, Eliza realized. You said you're connected to Abaddon through it. It must be able to track you. The footsteps reached the porch. A heavy hand knocked on the door. Alexander, called a voice that was almost Marcus's. I know you're in there. We need to talk. Eliza grabbed my arm. The back door, now! We moved silently through the cabin, gathering our most essential research. As we reached the rear door, another knock came, harder this time. You cannot run from what you have become, Alexander, the voice called. The transformation has already begun. I can feel it in you. I hesitated, hand on the doorknob. What if he's right? What if I'm already changing? He's lying, Eliza insisted, trying to make you give up. That's exactly what Abaddon wants, your willing surrender. The front door splintered with a tremendous crash. Wood fragments scattered as a figure stepped through the ruined entrance. It still wore Marcus's face, his suit, his physical form. But the movement was wrong, jerky yet fluid, like a marionette controlled by an unskilled puppeteer. The chest wound where he had stabbed himself was visible through his torn shirt, but no blood flowed. Instead, darkness seemed to pulse within the opening. Time to leave, Eliza whispered. We slipped through the back door and ran for the trees. Behind us, the creature called out, its voice shifting between Marcus's familiar tones and something ancient and inhuman. The contract cannot be broken, Alexander, only fulfilled. Embrace what you are becoming. We plunged into the forest, ducking under branches and scrambling over fallen logs. Eliza led the way, clearly familiar with these woods. There's an old hunting lodge about a mile east, she panted. We can regroup there. I glanced back, expecting to see the Marcus thing in pursuit. The forest behind us was empty, but somehow that was more terrifying than if I'd seen it following. It meant the creature was confident it could find me, no matter where I ran. As we crashed through the underbrush, one thing became clear. The research, the plans, the theories about breaking the contract. They were no longer abstract exercises. They were a desperate race against time, against my own impending transformation, against the supernatural force that had already claimed Marcus and now came for me. The hunting lodge was little more than a shack, but it offered temporary shelter as night fell. Eliza barricaded the door with what furniture we could find, though both of us knew it would offer little protection. "We need a plan," she said, spreading our salvaged research on a rickety table. "We can't just keep running." I paced the confined space. "The 3 Rs. I've recognized what I've done. I need to formally renounce Prometheus and then find the right sacrifice." "Renunciation first," Eliza agreed. "How do we make it official?" "I could record a video. State explicitly that I'm giving up all claims to Prometheus." She pulled out her phone. "No signal here, but we can record now and upload it when we reach town." I stood against the wall as Eliza positioned her phone. "My name is Alexander Sullivan, co-founder and 50% owner of Prometheus Digital. I hereby formally renounce all ownership rights, financial interests, and benefits derived from the company. This renunciation is total and irrevocable. I want no part of what Prometheus has become, or the means by which its success was achieved." A sharp pain lanced through my chest as I spoke, as if something was being physically torn from me. I gasped, doubling over. "Alex!" Eliza dropped the phone and rushed to my side. "What's happening?" When I finally straightened, I felt both diminished and paradoxically lighter. "I think that actually worked," I panted. "At least partially. I felt something break." Eliza studied my face. "You're pale. And there's something. The shadow around you. It's less visible now. That's 1 R down. 2 to go." Before we could discuss our next steps, a cold wind swept through the lodge, though all windows were closed and the door barricaded. The temperature plummeted until our breath fogged. "He's found us," I whispered. The walls creaked ominously. The single light bulb flickered, then shattered, plunging us into darkness. Eliza fumbled for her phone, activating its flashlight. In its beam, we watched as darkness seeped through the cracks in the walls, pooling on the floor like living ink. The darkness gathered, coalescing into a vaguely humanoid shape. Not Marcus this time, but something less defined, more primal. Renunciation is not escape. "Alexander Sullivan," came that mind voice I remembered. "The contract remains. Your soul remains forfeit." I stepped forward, placing myself between the shadow and Eliza. "I've rejected the benefits of our deal. I've recognized what you truly are. All that remains is redemption." The shadow pulsed with amusement. "Redemption? There is no redemption for one who has tasted what you have, who has become what you are becoming." "What am I becoming?" I demanded. The shadow expanded. "My vessel, my instrument in this world. The process has already begun. Your humanity erodes with each passing day." "You're lying," I insisted, though doubt gnawed at me. "I feel more like myself since leaving Prometheus, not less. A temporary regression. The transformation is not linear. There are moments of seeming clarity before the final change." The shadow contracted suddenly, condensing into a more solid form. "Look." Before our eyes, the darkness sculpted itself into a mirror image of me, but not as I was now. This version was pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes that reflected no light. The lips were stretched in an unnatural smile that revealed too many teeth, too sharply pointed. "This is what awaits you, what you are becoming." I recoiled from the grotesque doppelganger, but recognized the truth in what Abaddon showed me. The nightmares, the subtle changes in my reflection, the growing shadows at my periphery, all signs of a transformation already underway. "How do I stop it?" I asked, my voice barely audible. The shadow me tilted its head at an impossible angle. "You don't. You surrender to it. You embrace your destiny as my vessel. And if I refuse, then the process continues, but with pain instead of pleasure. The outcome remains the same." Eliza stepped forward, her voice steady despite her fear. "There's always a way out of these contracts. Every story, every tradition says so." The shadow rippled, its attention shifting to Herm. "The human female speaks of stories, of traditions, as if they apply to me. I am Abaddon. I am beyond your pathetic narratives of redemption." "If that were true," Eliza challenged, "you wouldn't be here trying to convince Alex to surrender willingly. You'd just take him." The shadow pulsed angrily. Impertinent mortal. Your soul is not bound by contract, but it can still be taken. I pulled Eliza back. Leave her out of this. This is between you and me, is it? Was it not her investigation that led you to flee? Was it not her influence that prompted your futile attempt at renunciation? The shadow expanded. Perhaps she is the key to your willing surrender. Tendrils of darkness shot out, wrapping around Eliza's throat. She gasped, clawing at the incorporeal bonds that nonetheless seemed to be choking her. "Stop!" I shouted. "Let her go." "Surrender willingly and she lives," Abaddon offered. "Resist, and I take her soul as compensation for your defiance." Eliza's eyes met mine, wide with terror, but also determination. Even as the shadow tightened around her throat, she managed to shake her head slightly. "Don't do it," her expression pleaded. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a clarity I hadn't felt since before signing the contract. Eliza was willing to die rather than see me surrender to Abaddon. Her courage, her integrity, her unwavering commitment to doing what was right despite the personal cost. These were the qualities I had compromised in pursuit of easy success. And in that realization, I understood what my redemptive sacrifice needed to be. "I have a counteroffer," I said, stepping closer to the shadow. "Take me now, as I am, an imperfect, incomplete vessel, but leave Eliza and everyone else connected to Prometheus alone, forever." The shadow paused, its hold on Eliza loosening slightly. "You offer willing surrender? I offer myself in exchange for their freedom, a trade. My willing surrender for their complete release from any obligation or connection to you." Interesting. The shadow released Eliza entirely. "You would sacrifice your humanity not to save yourself, but to save others." "Yes." I stood my ground as the shadow loomed closer. "That's my offer. Take it or leave it." Such nobility, Abaddon mocked. "But why should I accept less than what the contract promises? In time, I will have you fully transformed and all the other souls, because I'm offering willing surrender now. No resistance, no further running." I met the featureless void. "Isn't that what you really want? My complete acceptance of my fate?" The shadow pulsed. "Your surrender in exchange for their freedom. All of them. Every employee, every client, everyone whose life has been touched by Prometheus. Including the woman who stands before me. Especially her." Eliza had recovered enough to speak. "Alex, no! This isn't the way." I turned to her, trying to convey in one look all that I couldn't say aloud. My gratitude for her help. My admiration for her courage. My certainty that this was the right choice. "It's the only way," I said softly. "Blood freely given can break what blood freely given has bound. Not my blood. Their freedom. That's the sacrifice that matters." "A noble interpretation," Abaddon commented, "but incomplete." "What do you mean?" "The sacrifice must be pure. Given out of love, not desperation. Freely offered, not coerced." The shadow contracted. "Are you acting from love, Alexander Sullivan, or from fear?" The question echoed Marcus's failed attempt. He had acted from fear, not love. But what motivated me now? I looked at Eliza, at her determined face, her unwavering courage. I thought of the Prometheus employees, each with their own struggles. "Love," I said firmly, "not romantic love. The kind of love that recognizes the humanity in others and values it above personal gain or safety." The shadow was silent for a long moment. Then it laughed, a sound like glass breaking, painful to human ears. "Interesting. I accept your offer. Your willing surrender now in exchange for their freedom." Relief washed over me, quickly followed by dread. But before I could speak again, the shadow surged forward, enveloping me completely, cold beyond imagination, penetrated to my bones, to my soul. Darkness filled my vision, my lungs, my mind. I was falling through endless night, and somewhere in that infinite darkness, I heard Eliza screaming my name, a sound that grew fainter as I plunged deeper into Abaddon's embrace. Time lost all meaning in the darkness. I floated in a void both endless and claustrophobic, aware of myself yet disconnected from physical sensation. Was this death? Was this what becoming Abaddon's vessel meant? The annihilation of self? Gradually awareness returned. First the sensation of breathing, then the feeling of a solid surface beneath me. Finally, sight, my eyes opening to dim surroundings that resolved into a familiar setting. I was in the Prometheus building, in the main boardroom. I lay on the polished table staring at the ceiling. My body felt strange, heavier somehow, yet also insubstantial. "Welcome back, Alexander Sullivan." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. I sat up slowly, expecting to see the shadow entity. Instead, I found myself alone. No, not quite alone. As I turned, I caught my reflection in the darkened windows, except it wasn't entirely my reflection. My face was still recognizable, but altered. My skin was paler, almost translucent. My eyes were darker. When I moved, my reflection seemed to follow a fraction of a second too late. "What have you done to me?" I asked, my voice sounding foreign. "I have begun the process of transformation," Abaddon replied. "You're becoming my vessel, as you agreed." I slid off the table, testing my limbs. "And the others, Eliza? The Prometheus employees? They're free?" "As agreed. Their connection to me is severed. The energy they provided returns to them." Relief washed over me. At least my sacrifice had meaning, had purpose. Whatever happened to me now, I had saved others from a similar fate. "What happens next?" I asked, studying my altered reflection. "The transformation continues. Day by day, hour by hour, you become less human, more vessel. In time, nothing of Alexander Sullivan will remain. Only Abaddon." The cold finality of this statement chilled me, complete oblivion. The ultimate destruction of self. How long? Days, perhaps weeks. The process is not uniform. I walked slowly around the boardroom, adjusting to the strange disconnection between intention and movement. "Why do you need a human vessel at all?" "I am limited in this realm without physical form. The contract provides me access, embodiment. Through you I will feed. Feed on what? On human essence, on life force, on soul energy. The same sustenance Prometheus has been collecting for me, but on a vastly larger scale. The horror of what I had agreed to become, a harvester of human souls, hit me with full force. This was worse than death. This was becoming an instrument of suffering. "I want to see Eliza," I said suddenly, "to confirm she's truly free. The woman is no longer relevant to our arrangement. I need to see her, to know she's safe." I stood firm, surprised to find I could still exert some control. "Consider it a final request before I surrender completely." Abaddon's presence shifted within me. "Very well. A final indulgence before your humanity fades entirely." I felt a strange tugging sensation, and the boardroom dissolved. Vertigo swept over me as reality reassembled into a modest apartment living room. Eliza sat on a sofa, her daughter beside her, watching television. They couldn't see me, I realized. I was present somehow, but not physically. Observing without being observed. Eliza's daughter looked healthy, vibrant even, with none of the pallor or weakness that often accompanied cystic fibrosis. Whatever healing Abaddon had provided seemed to have remained. As I watched, Eliza's phone rang. She answered, listened, then her face crumpled in distress. "When?" she asked, her voice breaking. "How did it happen?" I could not hear the caller's response, but I could see its effect. Tears welled in her eyes. "I understand." "Yes, of course. Thank you for letting me know." She ended the call, then buried her face in her hands. Her daughter leaned against her. "Mom, what's wrong?" Eliza took a deep breath. "That was about Mr. Sullivan, Alex. There was an accident. He's gone." My non-physical heart constricted at her words, at the grief in her expression. What accident had Abaddon manufactured to explain my disappearance? "I'm so sorry, Mom," the girl said, hugging Eliza. "I know he was your friend." Eliza nodded, wiping away tears. "He was more than that. He saved us, sweetheart. In ways you may never understand." "What do you mean?" Eliza seemed to struggle for words. "Sometimes people make sacrifices for others. Big sacrifices. And Alex, he made the biggest sacrifice of all." The girl considered this with the solemn wisdom of children. For us? For many people. Eliza hugged her daughter closer. And we have to honor that sacrifice by living the best lives we can, by being kind and honest and brave, the way he was in the end. Her words pierced me more deeply than any physical pain could have. In my final human act, I had found redemption, not through breaking the contract, but through transforming its terms. Through sacrificing myself not out of fear, but out of love. The scene began to fade. As Eliza and her daughter disappeared from view, I felt a profound sense of closure. Whatever happened to me now, I had saved them. I had made my choice freely, out of love rather than fear. Are you satisfied, Alexander Sullivan? Abaddon's voice returned, as the boardroom materialized around me once more. Yes, I answered honestly. They're free. That's all that matters. Such human sentimentality. The entity seemed almost curious. Such attachment to these brief, fragile lives. That's what makes us human. Our connections to each other. Our willingness to sacrifice for those connections. A weakness I will be glad to purge from your consciousness. Then let's get on with it, I said. Complete the transformation. Erase what's left of me. But as I spoke these words of surrender, something unexpected happened. A warmth bloomed in my chest, spreading outward through my limbs, counteracting the cold presence of Abaddon. What is this? Abaddon's voice held uncertainty, perhaps even concern. What are you doing? I'm not doing anything, I answered truthfully. The warmth continued to spread, growing stronger. This feeling, this emotion, it burns. And suddenly I understood what was happening. My sacrifice, made not from fear but from love, had introduced something alien to Abaddon's nature into our shared form. Something antithetical to its essence as the destroyer. It's love, I said simply. Not romantic love. The kind of love that values others above self. The kind that leads to willing sacrifice. The presence within me recoiled, retreating from the spreading warmth. It weakens me. It corrupts the vessel. A wild hope began to rise within me. What if this was the true meaning of Marcus's cryptic note? What if blood freely given didn't refer to physical blood at all, but to sacrifice motivated by love? What if such sacrifice wasn't just a way to break the contract, but a poison to Abaddon itself? I focused on the feeling, amplifying it, remembering Eliza's courage, her daughter's innocence, the Prometheus employees who had unwittingly become entangled in our unholy bargain. I thought of Marcus, trapped in his corrupted body. I even thought of myself, the person I had been before signing that contract, and the person I had become in my final human choice. "Stop!" Abaddon commanded, its mind voice now tinged with pain. "This weakens us both." "No," I said, embracing the warmth fully now. "This is what makes us human. This is what you can never understand or possess." The warmth erupted into light, not physical light, but something more fundamental, a radiance of spirit that illuminated me from within. I felt Abaddon's presence writhing inside me, desperately trying to escape the purifying fire. "What have you done?" it shrieked, its mind voice fracturing. "The contract forbids this." "The contract says my soul is yours," I replied calmly. "But you never understood what a soul truly is. It's not just energy to be harvested. It's the capacity for love, for sacrifice, for putting others before yourself." I felt something tearing inside me, the connection between myself and Abaddon unraveling, the parasitic presence being forced out by the very quality it had sought to exploit, human love. "I will return," Abaddon threatened, its presence diminishing now. "Another desperate human will sign. Another soul will open the door." "Perhaps," I acknowledged, "but they'll have my story to guide them. The knowledge that even the darkest contract can be broken by the right sacrifice." With a final, agonized shriek, Abaddon's presence ripped free from me. The boardroom filled with swirling darkness that circled me like a tornado before being sucked away into nothingness. Leaving only the faint scent of burning, I collapsed to my knees, suddenly alone in my body again. My reflection in the window looked normal, no pale skin, no unnatural sheen in my eyes. Just Alexander Sullivan, human and whole, but also irrevocably changed. For I had stared into the abyss, had felt the cold embrace of the destroyer, and had discovered the one force powerful enough to repel it. Not magic, not supernatural weapons, just the most human quality of all, the capacity to love others more than oneself. 3 months passed. Prometheus Digital imploded following my death and Marcus's disappearance. Financial journalists wrote lengthy exposés about the meteoric rise and fall of the tech world's most promising startup. Investigations found nothing more sinister than creative accounting and aggressive business practices. I watched it all unfold from a distance, from a new identity carefully constructed with Eliza's help. We met in a small cafe in a city far from our former lives. Eliza looked well, rested, healthy, unburdened by the shadow that had hung over us. "The official investigation has been closed," she said, sliding a newspaper across the table. "Insufficient evidence of criminal activity." I skimmed the article. "And the employees? Most have found new positions. And there have been no mysterious health declines, no supernatural retribution. Whatever connection Abaddon had to them is truly severed." I felt a weight lift from me. "And your daughter?" "Healthy," Eliza said, her eyes shining. "The doctors are baffled. Call it a spontaneous remission of her CF symptoms." "Let them," I said. "Science should." I considered this. I think the line between the supernatural and the simply unexplained is thinner than we imagine. Maybe entities like Abaddon have always existed in the shadows of human consciousness, feeding on our desires, our fears. Eliza studied me. "You've changed. Not in the way Abaddon intended, but still, profoundly. Near possession by an ancient entity will do that to a person," I replied with a wry smile. "But yes, I'm not the same Alexander Sullivan who signed that contract. That man died in the hunting lodge, sacrificed himself to save others. And who are you now?" I glanced down at the ID in my wallet with its new name. Someone trying to live a life worthy of that sacrifice. Someone who understands the true value of a human soul. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence. As we prepared to leave, Eliza hesitated. "There's one more thing you should know." About Marcus, a chill ran through me. "What about him?" "There's been no trace of him, or whatever was using his body, since that night at the cabin. No sightings, nothing. That's good news, isn't it?" Eliza nodded cautiously. "It is. But it makes me wonder, what happened to him? If Abaddon was expelled from you, was it also driven from Marcus?" "I don't know." Marcus's situation was different. He knew what he was signing. He embraced the transformation more completely, and his sacrifice failed because it came from fear, not love. Yes. I thought of Marcus in his final moments. But perhaps seeing my sacrifice, understanding what he had missed in his own attempt, maybe that knowledge freed him somehow. "You think he's still out there?" Eliza sounded uncertain. "I think that redemption is always possible, even from the darkest places. That's what my experience taught me. We parted ways, both knowing it might be the last time we saw each other. Our connection had served its purpose. Now we needed to build new lives, untainted by the shadow of Prometheus Digital. "Be well, Alexander," Eliza said, using my old name one final time. "Or whoever you choose to become now. You too." I clasped her hand briefly. "Thank you for believing in me, for helping me find the way out." "You found it yourself," she corrected. "You just needed someone to remind you of your own humanity." As I watched her walk away, I felt an unexpected sense of completion. The contract that had bound my soul was broken. The entity that had claimed ownership of my essence was banished. I was free, not just from Abaddon, but from the ambition and greed that had made me vulnerable to its offer in the first place. I turned and walked in the opposite direction, toward an uncertain future, but one entirely my own. 1 year after my death, I stood at the entrance of a modest storefront in a small coastal town, thousands of miles from where Prometheus Digital had risen and fallen. The sign above the door read simply, "Second Chances, Business Consulting for Ethical Startups." My new identity was firmly established. New name, new background, new appearance, thanks to subtle changes in how I presented myself. The bell above the door chimed as my first client of the day entered, a young woman with the unmistakable intensity of an entrepreneur with a vision. "Mr. Richards?" she asked, extending her hand. "I'm Maya Chen. We spoke on the phone about my sustainable clothing business. Please call me James," I replied, shaking her hand. "Have a seat and tell me about your vision." As she outlined her concept, ethically sourced materials, fair labor practices, transparent pricing, I felt a profound sense of rightness in my new role. Instead of building one massive, supernaturally successful company, I now helped dozens of small businesses grow sustainably, ethically, at a human pace. "The thing is," Maya said, her enthusiasm flagging slightly, "I've been approached by an investor offering everything I need to scale immediately. Full funding, no equity dilution, complete creative control." It sounds too good to be true. A cold feeling washed over me. "This investor," I asked carefully, "did they approach you unexpectedly? Perhaps after a setback or rejection from more traditional funding?" She looked surprised. "Yes, actually." "How did you know?" "Just experience," I said neutrally. "Did this investor provide any documentation? A contract, perhaps?" Maya nodded, reaching into her bag. "That's partly why I wanted to consult with you. The terms seem incredible, but there's something about the language that feels off." She pulled out a familiar-looking document, not the ancient leather book itself, but a modern paper that I suspected contained the same essential terms that had bound my soul to Abaddon. My hands trembled as I took it from her. "Have you signed this?" I asked urgently. "No," Maya replied, startled by my intensity. "I wanted legal advice first." Relief flooded through me. Don't sign it. Don't meet with this investor again. Don't have any further contact with them." Her eyes widened. "Is it some kind of scam?" "It's a predatory agreement. The costs are hidden but enormous. I've seen businesses destroyed by arrangements like this. But the opportunities aren't worth what you'd sacrifice," I interrupted firmly. "Maya, true success isn't about meteoric growth. It's about building something sustainable, something that genuinely adds value to the world without extracting a greater cost elsewhere." She looked at the contract dubiously. "You make it sound almost evil." "Some bargains are," I said simply. "But there's another way, a human way. Slower, harder, but ultimately more rewarding." Maya was silent for a moment, then tore the contract in half. "I think that's why I came to you instead of signing immediately. Something felt wrong about it, even though it offered everything I thought I wanted." That instinct, that inner voice questioning too good to be true offers, is worth listening to, I told her. "Now let's talk about legitimate funding options that align with your ethical vision." As we delved into practical strategies, I felt a quiet sense of purpose. This was my redemption work. Not just building a new life for myself, but actively helping others avoid the trap I had fallen into. Every entrepreneur I steered away from Abaddon's offer was another soul saved from the fate that had nearly consumed mine. Later that evening, I walked to the small beach near my new home. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of gold and crimson. I removed my shoes and let the cool sand run between my toes. In the distance, a child laughed, the sound carrying clearly on the sea breeze. Ordinary moments of human happiness, untainted by supernatural influence. This was the world I had nearly lost. I sat on the sand and watched the sun sink, thinking about the journey that had brought me here, about Marcus, who had introduced me to darkness, but also shown me the importance of right motivation. About Eliza, whose courage had reminded me of my own humanity when I was in danger of losing it. About Abaddon, the entity that had nearly claimed my soul, but had ultimately taught me its true value. As I walked away from the beach, I felt a momentary chill, a brief sense of being watched. I paused, looking back at the darkened shoreline. For an instant, I thought I glimpsed a familiar silhouette against the night sky, tall, thin, with something not quite right about its proportions. Then it was gone, if it had ever been there at all. A reminder, perhaps, that darkness always lingered at the edges of human experience. That entities like Abaddon never truly disappeared, only waited for the next desperate soul willing to sign away their humanity for a taste of supernatural success. But where darkness persisted, so too did light. Where temptation lurked, so too did the capacity for resistance, for choosing the harder but more authentic path, one soul at a time. One ethical business at a time, I would build my counter-offering to the darkness, not with supernatural power, but with the most human magic of all, the capacity to learn from our mistakes, to help others avoid them, and to find redemption in the most unexpected places, even in a contract with my name on it. And that concludes our story for today. I want to thank you for staying with me until the very end. If you enjoyed this tale from the shadows, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more stories that will keep you awake at night. Have you ever experienced something strange or unexplainable? Or perhaps you've heard a chilling story passed down through generations? Share it in the comments below. Your story might be featured in our next video. Until next time, remember, not all mysteries are meant to be solved.